When I was growing up, I was maybe 13, maybe around 12, 13, and I decided that I wanted to be a film director very early on. Little did I know that that choice, that path would lead me to a life of great suffering, broken expectations, and continuous struggle. But would I have it any other way? No, I don't think so. I wanted to make this video because I think it's important to let people know, especially people who are starting out, they're young, that this is a very, very hard life. Even if you're an actor or a sound engineer or director of photography, whatever, it's always going to be extremely hard to make a stable living out of making narrative work, out of making films, movies. Let's put aside all the other things that people like to call filmmaking, which aren't, like wedding videography, music videos, corporate work. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who want to be film directors and have success in the business, making films and making a stable living out of it, if not even better. In my case, I'm not after success. I'm not after success in terms of money or fame. I just want to tell stories. I want to shoot films, edit them, and have people see it, see the work that I did. And there is no bigger passion in my life than that. And it's heartbreaking. I'm 46 years old. I've had some success in my career. I've made 2 television shows, narrative work, mind you, and I made about 3 films, about three feature films. None of them worked, but I did learn a lot from those experiences, especially my last feature film, which was a complete disaster, but it was an invaluable lesson in growth, and I gained so much experience from that failure alone that I don't think I would ever take it back. I would rather not take that ever back from my life because it was so invaluable. I suffered a lot. I went into therapy because of that. I had to take medication for my depression, my anxiety attacks, because it was such a painful experience. It was painful growth, basically. And failure is essential. Without failure, you don't grow. With success, you just don't understand. If all you know is success, you will never treasure it and value it as much as someone who has failed. And you will never be as deep, in my opinion, as someone who has failed, if all you know is success. Because pain, suffering, is the backbone of any artist. If you're in music, if you're a painter, if you're an architect, whatever it might be that requires a creative instinct, a creative impulse, you need pain, you need suffering, because that generates art. Making a film is extremely hard. Making a feature film is extremely hard. There are so many variables and so many things you have to manage and so many things that have to work that it is extremely hard. And it's hard to make a film. It's even harder to make a good one. And the problem with this life, with this business, with this ambition of becoming a successful filmmaker, replace successful or understand successful as whatever you find your expectations of success to be. But you depend, to make a film, you depend on other people. There is no way around that. You depend on financing, you depend on manual labor from other people, you have to have money, you have to have time, and you have to have all these things come together to make your vision a reality. This doesn't happen with a lot of other art forms. Like writing, you can just write, right? It's not very expensive to just write. You can either write it on paper or you can have a computer and write it that way. And you can compose a song, you can sing a song. God knows how many people are singing on TikTok and YouTube, making their vision come to life without any particular obstacle other than their will to do it. But with filmmaking, we're kind of fucked because we need other people. We need money. We need a whole organization of elements to come together and help us bring our vision to reality. And that is a bummer because half the time we will never make what we want to make. We'll just have to resort to making what we can make, which isn't a bad thing necessarily because it will force you to become even more creative. But it's also very frustrating when you're trying to, make a living out of this and failing constantly because there is no merit in this business. You don't get hired if you're good. You don't get fired if you're bad. It's about connections. It's about networking. It's about being born in the right place, being born under the right parents, knowing the right people. That's what makes this business work. And no matter how good you are, it will never guarantee any type of exposure or success, as opposed to what I said before with singers and writers and artists and painters and stuff. Usually in those fields, talent will supersede any kind of networking necessity. Of course it exists. Of course you need to do that as well. But in film, you really, really need that because otherwise you won't do anything. Because it involves a lot of money, it becomes a problem and it becomes a business. And once it becomes a business, it's all fucked. I guess my point of making this video is just to say that understand that this life will be hard. Whatever you think, if you're a young person in your early 20s or late teens and you want to be a film director, understand that it probably won't happen at least the way you imagine it. And it will be extremely hard and painful, and your life will be filled with sorrow and frustration and broken expectations. But you have to love it. If you don't love this, what's the point? If you're not completely obsessed about this, what's the point? Why suffer? Why, expose yourself to this life when you can just do something else that might be a little less arduous and painful to do? So you have to love it. And if you don't love it, what the hell are you doing? And then you ask me, but why have I endured everything? Because I love it. Because it's been a calling for me ever since I was a child. All I've ever done in my life is make films. I started making films when I was 15 years old and I never stopped. And it's been 31 years. Never stopped. Always making short films, always making something. Success isn't here to show. I have nothing to show for except for my TV work and my feature films, but even those are kind of irrelevant, really. They're just something that I can prove and show to people that I know how to make a film, but they're just that. They're nothing more than that at this point. And of course, as I said before, they are part of my growth and part of who I am. So you gotta love this. You want to be a film director because you want to tell stories. And that is the most important thing. So here's my advice to all of you people in this film business. Do it if you love it. And it really doesn't matter if it'll pay off or not, because you should be happy by just doing it. And that's where I find my peace. There is nothing better than shooting, directing actors, editing, sound mixing, putting the soundtrack for the first time and listening to the score and say, oh my God, this is coming to life. So that is my piece. That is my purpose. And that's how you should think about your life as an artist in this business. If you start measuring your life based on your exposure and success in terms of having films in theaters and millions of people watching them, you'll be screwed. You need to find your happiness in the process and not the outcome. The outcome being the consequences of the film. You should be happy just by doing it and not by whatever it brings you after that. So that's what I try to do. I try to be happy just by filming, picking up the camera, rounding out some actors, putting up some lights and saying action. That is my biggest pleasure in life. And that should be yours as well, if you're in this business. And yeah, I just wanted to make this video because it's been very hard lately. And when I say lately, I say about the last 10 years at least. And YouTube is giving me an opportunity to kind of talk about what I love to talk about, which is films and filmmaking. And I'm also taking this opportunity to do a little therapy to the world to see and try and help people who might be struggling with this life choice. Do it because you love it, and love it just because you do it, and not because of whatever comes in consequence of what you did. Thank you very much for watching if you stuck this long. And my heartfelt good luck, and may you find peace in your life in whatever you do. And I'll see you next time.